Hello everyone, this is part 5 of What If Naruto Passed the Genin test, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. Where am I? Naruto wondered as he floated through a black, silent void. There was no wind, no light, and no sounds of any kind. It was completely devoid of anything save Naruto himself. Is this hell? Did I?s. Not yet, rumbled a thunder-like voice in the distance. But you are indeed close. Naruto began to shift around, looking for the source of the voice, but he couldn't see anything. Where are you? He called out into the darkness. Here, answered the voice from all around. Where? Asked Naruto again. I can't see. There was a sound like a deep rumbling. Then open your eyes if you want to see. But, said Naruto, my eyes are open. It's just too dark. Then you are nearer death than I would have thought, said the monstrous voice. You humans are so frail, but fortunately, so easy to repair. Who are you? Shouted Naruto, I'm tired of this game. Where am I and who the hell are you? Naruto suddenly ceased floating as his feet made contact with something solid. He collapsed to his knees, and though he couldn't see, he began to feel around his surroundings. Much to his dismay, there were no distinguishing characteristics of any kind around him. The ground was completely flat and as smooth as polished granite. He stood up and rubbed his eyes. Slowly, taking several minutes, his vision began to return. It was as if a shroud was slowly being drawn away from his face and he looked up. He was in an enormous chamber, black as the abyss and empty of anything but a mammoth cage in what was, as far as Naruto could tell, the exact center of the room. The structure was almost like something someone would put an object on display in, but on a massive scale. It was far too large to practically hold anything. The bars were a dozen feet apart, more than 8 inches thick, and ran from the floor up until they disappeared into the blackness. A cold wind seemed to flow out of the darkness within the cage, for it was truly dark inside, as black as hell. Over here, said the voice from the cage. A knot formed in the pit of Naruto's stomach, but he cautiously approached until he was only a few feet from the cage. Hello, he asked. 2 red eyes opened high up in the cage, and stared down at Naruto. They narrowed and the cat-like pupils dilated back and forth to examine him as they descended several stories to reach his level, and when they did, Naruto was frozen. His clothes and hair began to sway as a hot, sticky wind blew over him, sounding like the bellows of a furnace. A gust knocked Naruto back as whatever the eyes and breathing belonged to snorted in distaste. You remind me of that 4th Hokage, rumbled the voice, and it makes me wish to destroy you, but for my own sake I will resist the temptation. Naruto fell backwards and scuttled away without turning his back on the cage. What do you mean I look like the 4th? He asked again, trying to mask the dread that had gripped him. Who the hell are you? The eyes reared back up and blinked once or twice. I am, the voice said with unimaginable authority, Kyuubi no Kitsune, greatest of the demon lords. Wait, said Naruto nervously, Yondaime destroyed you, he SD himself to KU when you attacked Konoha 12 years ago. How can you be here? Wherever here is. The beast was silent for a moment. The 4th imprisoned me here, in you of all places. Back then you were barely a kid so you wouldn't remember. Wait, said Naruto looking around, you mean we're in me? How does that work? It's a complicated process really, said Kyuubi condescendingly, and I can't really explain it to one as uneducated and inexperienced as you in any but the simplest terms. Naruto was insulted and tempted to verbally fight back, but in a rare moment that didn't lack common sense, he decided it would be best not to argue with a demon lord. When I retaliated against Konoha, continued Kyuubi, it was your 4th Hokage who came out to meet me when I said you're elite. We were locked in glorious combat for hours on end and neither of us could dominate the other. He was simply too quick, but I was far too powerful for his pitiful attacks to do anything but annoy me. Finally he realized I was too great for him, so he tried to seal me away but couldn't muster the chakra necessary to even touch me, much less lock me in some trinket. But the clever bastard went for help and discovered a way to use his own soul to bind my essence inside of another soul, the way you humans combine a resin and a catalyst to create an epoxy. The eroge was lost on Naruto, who didn't know what an epoxy was, but he got the general idea. So what am I doing here? Asked the Genin. Resting, answered Kyubi, that Yamanaka nearly cut you in half. Even I've had to work quickly to keep you alive the past few hours. And I won't be able to actually start healing you until these ninjas get you back to Konoha and Salize you. I'm confused, said Naruto, sitting down. I mean, just so many questions now. It's not my job to patronize you and answer your questions, Kit. The giant fox stepped forward and its silhouette took form in front of the faint backdrop of misty red chakra. He was massive, perhaps 100 feet tall or more even. When he sat down in his elegant, cat-like pose, he stood even higher at the shoulder, and his eyes burned like bloody stars. Can I ask you just one question for now? Asked Naruto. Kyubi emanated a deep rumble, almost like laughter. You just did, but you may ask another. I may not answer it, but you may ask at least. He said sneeringly. Naruto grimaced in annoyance. Why are you keeping me alive? Again Kyubi chuckled devilishly. I assure it's out of no affection for you. I want out of here, Kit. I can't do that if you should Shinigami claim you, he gets me as my essence is bound to yours. So you're the reason I never get sick or hurt or anything. Kyubi nodded. I cannot keep you from harm, but I can watch you and ensure you heal quickly should you be injured. The wound the Yamanaka inflicted on you, however, is dire. Naruto swallowed hard. How bad is it? Kyubi hesitated. He came within inches of severing your arm, cut your heart open, and punctured your left lung. You have no idea how close we are to passing into the void. I managed to get your heart back in one piece, but even so. Keeping up with the massive loss of blood is enough, but maintaining your breathing and moving blood without your heart is near impossible. Naruto walked forward and put a hand on one of the massive bars. Am I going to Naruto asked, shaking just a little. That, said the fox, is up to this Kakashi person. You are slowly even with my aid, but he may get you back in time at the furious pace he's running. He must have trained under Yondaime to move so fast. And that Hyuga girl keeping up with Kakashi is no small feat either. If he gets you back before your body simply shuts down, then I can aid the medics in stabilizing you. After that I can stop worrying about keeping you alive, and I can focus on healing you. Naruto grimaced and sat down with his back to the cage. Kyubi turned back around and looked up into the gloom where his chakra was slowly floating. For whatever reason, Naruto's mind continued flashing to Ino. He didn't see her or anything, but he was horribly worried. He kept thinking he could hear her crying or hear people whispering around her. How do you know what's going on outside of here? Asked Naruto after a moment. Kyubi looked over his shoulder. I'm trapped in your consciousness, bound by your soul. Everything you feel, I feel. Everything you see, I see. Whatever happens to you, happens to me in one form or fashion. Now I'm considerably more resilient to emotion than you petty humans, but I still know exactly what you feel. Naruto hesitated, not entirely sure how he felt about someone else knowing his innermost feelings and thoughts, but then shrugged it off, reasoning that Kyubi would never be able to tell anyone. He got up and began to pace around, looking up at Kyubi once in a while. The fox just sat there, intent on his task, and not saying anything. Why don't you just pump more chakra into healing me? Asked Naruto. You must have a lot if you're a demon lord. I could, said Kyubi, if I wanted to K you. I'm a demon, Kit. My chakra is infinite but toxic to you lesser life forms. I have to heal you just from healing you using my chakra. And there's a point where your body will be so poisoned from my chakra that I can't heal you no matter how much I use. It's not a very practical process, but it's all we've got for now. Naruto nodded, understanding a little better now. Kakashi barreled through the treetops, completely ignoring anything other than large branches in his way. The Kopinin was grave, his heart raced and his brow was soaked with sweat. Naruto's blood sped from his clothes. He leapt from tree to tree, cradling Naruto's body in his arms, and sprinted among the branches, moving at almost 20 leagues an hour with Hinata hot on his heels. Her face was streaked red from the tears that continued to fly from her face as they ran, and her legs wobbled with every step, but she refused to stop or give in. She had promised herself to see that Naruto made it safely back, regardless of the cost. The Byakugan was active as she carefully watched the path ahead for danger, but her primary focus was on Naruto. She couldn't identify the wispy red chakra that slowly steamed from his wound, but it seemed to be preserving him, so she prayed it wouldn't give out. Even with the mysterious energy, the blood still moved sluggishly and irregularly through his veins, and most of it drained out and onto Kakashi. "Hinata," said Kakashi. "Hi," she answered. "You can still wait here for the others. There's nothing you can do. You're just wearing yourself out." She shook her head. "No thank you, Kakashi-sama," Hinata answered, stammering for the words in her exhaustion but saying them with resolution. "Even if I can't do anything to help, I can still be here, and that's more than nothing." Kakashi nodded, and they both stepped the pace up even more. Hinata navigated, pointing out the routes that were the closest and would provide the least resistance, while the Genin made the final call on the paths, deciding if the ease would make up for the added distance, and within the hour, they could see Konoha's walls off in the distance. SC. Naruto. Ino burst through the hospital doors, and ran to the front desk. "Where's Na?" "Miss, you'll have to be quiet," responded the receptionist. "This is a hos." "What room is Uzumaki Naruto in?" interrupted Ino in a much quieter but no less stress-filled voice. "I need to see him immediately." The nurse pulled a large notebook off of one of the shelves behind her and swiveled back around to set it on the counter in front of Ino. She opened it up and flipped through until she came to one of the pages nearest the end and began scanning through the appointments and emergency entries. Seconds ticked by as Ino waited impatiently, tapping her foot and glancing between the clock and the nurse. Could she read any slower? Wondered Ino. Can she even read at all? "Mom, it's important," Ino said tersely. "I need to see him and..." "He's in emergency surgery right now," said the nurse. "No observers allowed." Ino clenched her eyes and whirled around in frustration, pressing her fists to her forehead and groaning. "What room will he be moved to after the surgery?" she asked. "I'm sorry," said the nurse, "but that's not information I'm allowed to distribute to anyone without the proper clearance." Ino stood for a second, then turned back around and propped herself up against the desk, pointing her hands at the nurse and lowering her head. "I'm sorry to hear that," she said in a low tone. The nurse was just about to reply, when her head jerked back and Ino's body slumped forward a little but caught on the desk. The glassy-eyed nurse shook her head, then looked back down at the book and scanned through the last few pages again. "Bingo," said the nurse in a strangely childlike voice, "operating room 12, and room 721 after that." The nurse put her hands together and slumped forward as a small blue light flashed behind her eyes. At the same time, Ino stood upright, and walked off smiling girlishly. Ino trotted quickly down the hall to the east wing as the receptionist sat up rubbing her head, and turned the corner to the main operating room. All but one of the windows in had large blinds shutting out prying eyes, and Sarutobi stood in front of that one. His face was unreadable, though he shifted his weight from side to side. "Hokage-sama," Ino said sheepishly as she approached and bowed. He turned and looked her over, taking notice of the tension so readily displayed on her face. "Ino, what are you doing here? This is supposed to be a restricted area." Ino bowed again, and assumed a humble demeanor. "I heard Naruto was in the hospital and that he'd been badly hurt on a mission, and well. You just had to be here." Sarutobi finished her sentence and sidestepped a little. "You won't be able to see him from here," he began, "but you can see at least be a little closer." Ino nodded gratefully and stood beside him. Inside the operating room, two doctors worked on a body hidden by sterile curtains. Half a dozen nurses and aides bustled about, handing the surgeons different tools, and sterilizing used ones. Sarutobi's lips mimicked the motions of sucking on a pipe, though even the Hokage was not allowed to smoke in a hospital, while Ino held her hands to her chest, trying to understand what was going on. "How bad is it?" she asked after a few minutes. Sarutobi grimaced and moved like he was going to take a pipe off his lips, then stopped when he remembered he didn't have one. "We're not entirely sure," he mumbled, "but the doctors said that he would normally have a 1 in a million shot." Ino stifled a gasp, and covered her mouth. She tried not to start crying as Sarutobi stepped closer and put a hand on her shoulder. He drew her to his side and smiled down at her. "But for the future Hokage of Konoha," he said in a less dismayed tone, "I'd say they're much better than that." Ino closed her eyes and nodded. She did not want to think of what might become of Naruto if even one of the surgeon's hands slipped just once. His life is hanging by a thread, thought Ino. Naruto, please don't s. I'm fine. It's just a scratch, now let me go. Demanded a girl's voice from away down the hall. Sakura came marching around the corner, followed closely by a nurse who was trying to convince the pink-haired Genin that she needed to be resting. Sarutobi and Ino turned to see Sakura resisting the nurse at every junction, and keep pushing their way. Ino turned back towards Naruto as the Hokage went to meet the two bickering girls. What's the problem here? He asked sternly, but not harshly. Sakura was silent, looking at the ground while the nurse cleared her tea and flipped her blonde hair back behind her ear. This child, she said, is disobeying my orders to stay in bed and rest. Not only that, but she even went so far as to break into the records at the desk to find out which room Uzumaki Naruto was in. Ino looked off towards the three as a knot formed in her stomach. She glared at Sakura, a sudden distaste welling up in the back of her mind. This child, said Sarutobi, is a ninja of Konoha, and you are not one of her superiors. Do I make it clear that you have no authority to force any kind of treatment, medical or otherwise, on her? Yes, sir, the nurse said immediately, bowing low and shuffling quickly away. Thank you, said Sakura. I won't allow someone to forbid anyone from seeing a member of their team. The Hokage then just sniffed and went back next to Ino. Sakura followed and stood on the old man's opposite side. Ino crossed her arms and blew a lock of hair out of her face. Glancing Ino's way, Sakura scowled and began to chew on the end of a broken fingernail. What exactly are you doing here, Ino? She asked coldly, putting her hands back down by her side. Waiting to make sure Naruto is all right, answered Ino in an equally unwelcoming tone. And you? Said Sakura, I wanted to check on Naruto too. Did you come to make fun of him? I don't think he really needs that from you again right now. Ino sneered. I came here, Sakura said angrily, to see if there was any way in the world I could help. I'd heard he wasn't doing well, and then I saw you, so I figured it must be really bad if the vultures were already circling. Ino took a step around the Hokage, who immediately took a step back to carefully observe, and whirled on Sakura. She got right up in her face and the pink-haired Genin didn't hesitate to do the same. Is there something you want to say to me? Growled Ino. Actually yes, said Sakura, I don't think Naruto needs a pig like you hanging around and bothering him with all your whining. A loud crack resonated through the hall as Ino slapped Sakura squarely across the cheek with all the gusto a 12-year-old kunoichi could muster. Sakura twisted under the blow, but then whirled back around and slapped Ino just as hard. Sarutobi raised an eyebrow, but didn't intervene as the two girls stared each other down. Both their cheeks were already beginning to bruise, and both faces grew redder and redder as the animosity built. Sakura was the first to act, slapping Ino again, to which Ino quickly responded with yet another blow to Sakura's face. Why don't you just go indulge on some of cream cakes? Sakura barked, I doubt you could get any bigger. Maybe you should go talk to one of the surgeons, growled Ino, I'm sure they'd be happy to move some of all forehead to your chest. God knows you could use it. Sarutobi immediately stepped between them and moved them apart, stopping the insults from spiraling into a genuine fight. Lass, he said calmly, treating them with all the respect any kunoichi could expect, please control yourselves. Look, they're finished. Both girls rushed over to the window as the surgeons set down the tools and stepped back. The nurses removed the curtains, and reveled Naruto. The two kunoichi nearly gasped when they saw him. He was pale, and a dark crimson gash was stapled and stat shut, running from his shoulder down to below his heart. The boy's eyes were clenched shut, and his breathing was apparently pained. I don't think, said Sarutobi kindly, and kneeling between the two, that Naruto needs to be surrounded by two bickering little girls right now. Maybe you should try to at least get along, if not try to be nice to each other for his sake. The two girls looked over the Hokage and simply glared at each other. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.